Belief is the enemy of knowing.
All right, man. Welcome to Crow 777 Radio. This is hour one of episode 647. Jason Lindgren is with me, and Dr. Trebing returns. In the beginning here, we're going to do a very brief review of germ theory, and we're going to get into a bunch of topics that matter. Fair warning, hour two is going to contain a bunch of things we can't run in public. Things like chemtrail seeding, nanotech. The notes that I'm pulling from label the hour two as the kill nest, but fair warning. Anyhow, welcome, Jason.
And a hot and humid good morning.
It is indeed, but not as bad as it normally is, so I'm not complaining. And welcome, Dr. Trebing. Welcome back.
Oh, thanks for having me, everybody. Always a pleasure to be with my friends here on Crow 777. And I hope everybody is enjoying summer, despite whatever they're dumping into the atmosphere with laser-induced wildfires.
It never ends. We have had the smoke here in Rhode Island that they're claiming came from Canada for, I don't know, a couple weeks. It was really bad last week because I couldn't film. But anyhow, do you want to tag any websites or books or anything before we jump in?
My classic book is Goodbye Germ Theory. Thank you. And the free information is always on sayno2vaccines.org. That's my popular blog, which gives a lot of health information and how to get free from vaccine torture and black magic. And as well, Goodbye Germ Theory has sold very well since COVID, since being on Crow, spreading it out. It's a good basic book on understanding how to get out of the germ theory consciousness, black magic trap that they have everybody, the propaganda locked into believing in these things that really don't exist, so that you could be free and very much toxic and disease-free too, to ensure that you don't get Alzheimer's and Parkinson's when you get older, and to ensure that your children don't become just another autism statistic.
Well, for my part, I would suggest to everybody listening that Goodbye Germ Theory is a must-read if you're a person who likes to share with others so they don't get duped in this world. This would be one of a handful of books I'm aware of. It would be a fabulous idea to buy 100 of them and randomly leave them around, like in doctor's offices or anywhere else where someone might stumble on them. Because the story of germ, which we're about to jump into, has been ruling the roost here since probably at least the 1930s, maybe a little earlier than that. And it's an absolute boondoggle that was made to pave the way so that you could get injected with poison. Anyhow, let's jump in and do a brief review of germ theory. Dr. Trebing.
Yeah, absolutely. So right now we should start with that due to vaccination, and of course they'll tell you that it isn't this, but due to that, every 3 in 100 people have autism. How about that for a stat? When I wrote the book, it was 1 in 10,000 people. Now 3 in 100 are suffering with it. So what is autism? Autism is a form of mental retardation, okay, as we used to call it, but it is brain damage due to toxicity, okay? The only thing that could cause the skyrocketing autism rates that we have is a systematic, well-planned, and orchestrated toxification of the nervous system. And that's what the whole vaccination industry has done. You guys have heard the metaphor of if you want to make some frog soup, you put the frog in and you make the water really nice and warm and comfy for him, but all of a sudden, then you just, over time, you turn the temperature up and so he doesn't even know he's being cooked, right? You've heard that metaphor before. Well, that's what they're doing with us with a belief in germ theory and medicine. Now, germ theory, in some part, has been around for 1,000 years or so. What's that about? I mean, people, I think, even in the desert, the Jews of the desert knew that, you know, there's something that's causing all these diseases, and they figured out that sanitation is the key. Keep everything clean, right? Which is really the big cause of disease. But with the way that the human mind works with ghost stories and inventing demons, and then not taking responsibility, when the body starts manifesting in purification, which causes sores on the skin and mucus in the lungs and everything else like that. Human nature wants to not take responsibility, and it wants to have a culprit of some sort, right? And so the culprit that they invented were these, they used to call them bad humors, you know, because they thought that they were spirits. And then in the time of Pasteur and the more quote unquote sciencey periods in the late 1800s and early 1900s, they started calling it germs. And basically, you're invaded by these things that are trying to destroy you. Nothing can be further than the truth. Everybody, I'm sure, on your stream here, Crow, knows about the difference between germ theory and terrain theory.
We have discussed it quite a bit.
I have been teaching this for over 20 years. I've been teaching terrain theory before it had a name, before they started calling it terrain theory. So it basically just means keeping your body pure. The terrain, your body, your temple needs to be kept pure. And if that's the case, you'll never get sick in many different ways. So a review of the germ theory, it's all false. What they're saying is causing disease is a external organism that you can get from touching a door handle or a toilet seat or somebody coughing or sneezing in your face and things like that. And we spread these things through contagion. Nothing can be further from the truth. These things get spread from a variety of different methods, which we can talk about. But what we're spreading is toxicity between each other and lack of sanitation. We're not spreading a germ. And the classic example, of course, is COVID, right? Where they really put this to the test and everybody thought that you had to walk around with the masks on and you had to be apart from people. The bad thing about that is that it happened for all those years. The good thing about COVID was that we saw what bullcrap it was and that none of these things apply. COVID was probably the largest testimony of how the germ theory is false and how viruses are not what people think they are. And bacterium, all these different so-called germs are created endogenously from within, and their methods of purification. Did you know that you even have fungus inside of you? And Crow, you talk about the death-based system, right?
Yep.
I mean, your body is designed to break down itself once it gets to disease and sick. And so the process that does that, there's a fungal process, and candida is within you. You can't get rid of it. And when you are ready to go, the candida is going to start breaking your body down. It's a fungus, which is why they use that purposely to get us sick. And we'll talk about that too. But a lot of these microorganisms, and even if you call them parasites, whatever you call them, that they're looking at under a microscope, are nothing more than body processes. People don't really understand how their bodies work. There are smaller organelles called microzyma by some, somatids by others, but if you look under a dark field microscope, you'll see them very active and moving around. And they're like little tiny light particles. They're actually fascinating to see. And they change into the different organisms that you might need in order to purify the body, clean out the cells, that type of thing. So if you just name a bacteria that is popular, Staphylococcus on the skin, Streptococcus from strep throat, E. coli, what's that one from Africa that they're always talking about is
Ebola,
right? All that kind of stuff, right? These are all varying shapes and sizes of organisms that are just created to purify the body. And they take different shapes and sizes to do different tasks. And, the body's wisdom can create so many of them. It's infinite. But what man does with the medical mind, is get into the classifications on them. When you take a microbiology class, that's all it's about. It's about going in there and classifying like these different shapes that can change. These shapes can change in a millisecond. When you take a snapshot of them under a microscope, these germs, and you look at them, let's say a doctor swabs your throat, and you get a culture of Streptococcus on there. Streptococcus is part of it, but that probably changed into something else a minute after the doctor swabbed your throat, or you look at it under a microscope. The problem with standard microscopic techniques today, and when I was a student, I did all of it. I did my electron microscopy and a standard light microscopy, is that you're taking a snapshot of something dead that is in that moment, right? I liken it in my lectures to everybody's at Thanksgiving, and you get Thanksgiving, you're around family members you might not necessarily want to be around, and you have 25 people around the table and everybody's arguing and back and forth, and then somebody gets up and says, okay, we're all just going to have a picture, right? And then everybody turns and smiles for the picture. Now, you think that picture is a characterization of how that family is. You look at them all, they're all smile, whatever, it's functional, right? But just the opposite is true when you get into the truth of really what's going on there. So light microscopy does that. When you look at something through dark field looks at the body in life. There's no killing, there's no staining, and you look at everything moving. And you can see these processes happen in light and dark field microscopy, which is fascinating. And this goes back years. This goes back 100 or so years when Pierre-Antoine Bouchamp was doing dark field work. There's been plenty of doctors who have done this. And Pasteur, of course, was working for him with the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds back in the day. And they really needed to get this mechanism for control of the population and fear out there. And also, to make mega billions off of useless products that they were going to start making. The
Petroleum
pills, and how the pharmaceutical industry got formulated in that time.
Quite a scam they pulled off.
There was a lot of disease in that time. And there was a lot of disease because there was a lot of iron and lead floating around in the air from coal production and the Industrial Revolution. And people were hacking and coughing and dying. And there was leprosy, there was smallpox, all of this stuff. And we can talk about what the real culprit of those things were. All the things you get vaccines for today that they say are from microorganisms and germs, all of these toxic, autism-creating shots that you give your children, that you play Russian roulette with your children every time you go to the pediatrician. You may as well put a bullet in a six-shooter and put it to your child's head and pull the trigger, all right? That's what you're doing, okay? Because when a child becomes autistic, and we see them in my practice, we try to heal them through our neurofeedback. Once they get to a certain level, they're gone. You just can't do it. And there is nothing that ends life in the way you know it. And every autistic parent will agree with you that than to have an autistic child that you have to take care of. All right. The best you'll get from that scenario are learning difficulties, attention difficulties, brain dysfunction, and high functioning autism, like an Asperger's, which the word we don't use too much anymore. But those things we can work with to reroute the brain to get rid of the autism and bring it back a bit. And we tell all of the parents with high functioning autistic kids, stop vaccinating. Some of them do, some of them don't. But all of these diseases that you're getting these vaccines for have historically either an origin of toxicity or an origin of poor sanitation. It's one of those two things, and it's explained very well in my book.
Your book is definitely a big win.
The good thing about my book is it's very easy to understand. It's an easy read. You get through it in a couple of days. Like Crow said, take it and stick it in around different places. Some people get pissed off at you doing that, but maybe if you get one person out of 100 that gets enlightened from it, you can save their lives and their whole genetic line. But you guys know what the real cause of diphtheria and whooping cough, which is pertussis, is? Any idea?
Jason?
Well, I'm sure the traditional answer is bacteria, but what is it?
Mm-hmm. Well, the real cause of diphtheria and whooping cough is arsenic, irritating the respiratory system. And I bet your listeners didn't know that, in the turn of the century, especially between 1850 and 1920, arsenic was a product that was used in women's skin creams. It was thought to make a youthful appearance, sharpen skin tone. And not only that, but there were probably 32 to 60 million rolls of wallpaper throughout Europe and the United States made with arsenic. So you had it in all of your walls, and in humid environments, it was leaching out in vapors through there, especially if there was mold involved. If it was damp, it attached to that, and now you have arsenic vapors coming through every home. And what you're not told is that when all these arsenic wallpapers were removed in the 1920s and 30s, because some researchers found out that that was the cause, diphtheria, whooping cough, all of these things just went way down before the advent of vaccines.
What are if someone was arsenic poisoned, but not enough to kill them, what would those symptoms be?
Well, same thing as pertussis, same thing as diphtheria. Diphtheria is essentially a swelling of the nasopharynx. You get these big pussy lesions on your uvula and on the back of your throat, and you're coughing a lot, you're spitting up pus. All that is just the body trying to contain the arsenic. You're being poisoned. If it gets into your lungs, you're being poisoned.
Is arsenic one of the ones that's very difficult to get out of the body?
It's difficult to get out, just as difficult as lead is to get out, but you can do it with chelation that I've talked about on some of your shows as well. And chelation with ACP, you could do that yourself, which is activated citrus pectin, DMAC, but you should have guidance with that.
Jason, I want to address a couple of the things you've laid down so far, but it occurs to me, because this comes up all the time, that, basically 100 years ago, we did the Spanish flu, and there are so many parallels. People like Steiner and others wrote about the truth about masks and other things, and yet they pulled this off again 100 years later. I have heard from people who I accept are in the know that there were mind weapons being used to get people to accept the directives they were been giving. And I can't prove that one way or the other. But you mentioned Ebola. Jason, you remember when we did the Ebola thing and we discovered that it was color-coded in all the AP Newswire stuff with that weird green? Do you remember that?
Yep, the Mr. Yuck green. Yep.
Yep. So it doesn't, put it this way, I won't dismiss that there was something like that going on, because when we looked at Ebola, it was so obvious that they put this off weird electric green, or just a weird green, in not most of the images, every AP image on the Newswire that we looked at. And it was so strange, because it would be like green gloves or a green bucket, or if there was nothing else, something green would be framed in the thing. And it was like they were doing the Pavlov's dogs things or something. Were you aware of that?
No, I wasn't actually. You would see that in the streaming or in the different photographs that they put out of it?
Well, I did notice it in video, but Jason and I were grabbing just image searches from the AP wire, the Newswire.
Back in the 80s, there were these stickers that they were giving out to kids, because that's when I was in school, and they called it the Mr. Yuck, and it's the same kind of sickly green color they used for all this programming.
And of course, we're musicians, so we immediately drew the line to the band Poison, because that was their whole vibe, was that weird green. And of course, what's their name? Poison. So there's obviously something going on there. But I just want to touch on the idea of germs, because, like, take the Romans, for example. We're told the Romans marched all over the world with thousands of men packed in close together. And if you read how they did it, they knew absolutely what you just laid down about sanitation. They would build a camp for 1,000 men in just a few hours, and they knew you had to put the latrine 100 feet away. And what's interesting about that, when I had to get my septic service done, the city mandates that you have to have a well, if you're in a place where there's a well, at least 100 feet away from your septic system. My point being is they've known this for a long time, and yet they're still pushing. Yeah, they're still pushing the germ narrative. But the other thing I wanted to touch on was, have you read The Invisible Rainbow, the book?
I have, yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so you're aware there are multiple clinical tests that have been done that prove you cannot take snot, breath, coughs, or any liquid out of a human being while they've got the flu and transfer it to another human being. And
started with the Rosenau experiments in the 1920s. He was the first one to prove that. He took sputum from infected soldiers and tried to infect, 300 people. None of them got sick from it. And so we really need to rethink what is actually causing contagion. And it would really shock people that the different causes. The reason we don't really know what causes contagion, and it's not sneezing in somebody's direction or somebody's face, is because we haven't studied it properly. When I'm doing my lectures and people say, well, okay, well, if it's not, whenever my kid goes to school, she gets the sickness that's going on in the school, then the kid comes home and spreads it to the entire family. So it's got to be a germ. And I say, no, it doesn't have to be a germ, because germs don't exist, not in the way that you think that they do. And just because we don't have another answer right now does not mean that the previous answer, which doesn't make any sense, is the truth. We just haven't put enough energy into studying it. And the answers are energetic, and also you can spread toxicity to one another, but it's another process.
Well, I would point out, you've read The Invisible Rainbow. There's one of the other books that I would suggest every human being that you ever meet should have read if they want to have a foundation of what's real. They're demonstrating that every time radio came online or any other electric thing, electric wires in cities, that's when people started getting the flu. Mm-hmm. Jason and I, years ago, interviewed Dr. Lena, and he gave the best description for a modern world grappling with, if there's no germs, why are we getting the flu? And he labeled it electromagnetic vampirism.
Yep.
And that is what I stick with. That is what I currently accept. And having read The Invisible Rainbow, I don't know how anyone could dismiss it. I mean, the dates line up perfectly.
And then people will say to you, well, how come when my kid goes to school, they come home and give the flu to everybody else?
Because they've been electromagnetically vampirized.
Right. But then they'll say, why didn't it happen before my kid went to school and picked it up? This is where people get stuck. My answer for that is that, listen, you're always sick. From the different electromagnetic waves that are out there, your nervous system and your respiratory system are always under attack. There are psychological elements to it that when you start seeing people coughing and sneezing and everything like that, and there have been studies on this, that you want to cough and sneeze, and there are benefits to staying home from school. We are all sick on the inside from all of this electronic vampirism going on, as you say. The primary system that it attacks is the nervous system and the sinuses, which we'll talk about a little bit later too, in my thesis of Kill the Nest. All the EMF stuff that they put up from COVID, when everybody was in and they proliferated it out there, it's another arm of HARP. And it's a control arm of the population to keep the population sick. And they're even just working on different aspects of mind control and everything through microwave. You can avoid all of this stuff by having a sound mind to begin with. And the primary areas that it attacks is the nervous system and the respiratory system. The number one reason people go to the hospital, it's because they got some sort of cough, cold and flu. Respiratory problems have gone up 500% in the last 20 years. So there are so many reasons why people get sick like this. So many that we haven't put any attention into and haven't really bothered studying. If we did, we get the answers. And they just, every time you turn on a television, you're bombarded with drug commercials and this bug causes this and this bug causes that. Keep people busy in commerce and trying to pay their bills. And, they're not going to listen to you. They're all indoctrinated into my kid goes to school, my kid brings home the flu. And that's it, So this is what we're up against. It's a massive system of mind control. This is why they have to be sure that you cannot discredit the germ theory, right? I think we've reached more of a mass consciousness with it now, certainly higher than it was pre-COVID, but still we're not a critical mass. I think you need 10% or more of critical mass. And no matter what, even people who knew that COVID was a scam, they're still germ oriented, I mean, the whole COVID thing really came around to bite them in the ass with the vaccines and everything like that. And a lot of people who still believe in germs and still believe in the medical model, the doctors and everything else are like, oh, yeah, that was wrong. And we didn't do that right and everything else. And next time we'll do it right. Guess what? There'll be a next time, right? Next time we'll do it right. Well, what does that mean exactly? Because you're still not thinking differently. Many of my patients who got the vaccine regret they got the vaccine. Many who didn't get the vaccine still believe in germs because the entire world is mind controlled with thinking that they're getting sick in a way that they're not getting sick. So this is the big problem. And this is why I say goodbye germ theory, because the root cause of all of this is the belief in these germs, which is a huge ghost story. And as long as we believe in that, we're not going to get anywhere because it keeps us focusing on something that doesn't exist, the germs. It keeps us from focusing on the real cause of toxicity and of why these people get sick. I mean, tuberculosis, all right? What causes that, guys?
You got me.
That was supposed to be bacteria as well, right?
It's all supposed to be bacteria. No, TB, which is still prevalent, causing 3,000 deaths a day in the world today, is still prevalent because of lead and coal burning and iron. It's lead and iron that creates TB.
And that's a respiratory problem?
Yeah. Again, very similar to diphtheria. You get these like lesions, these clumpy lesions in the lungs and in the throat, and this swelling, and you try to cough them up and you can't, and it blocks air passages. People often suffocate if they can't get these things out. The body is trying to encapsule the heavy metals, and then it gets mixed with white blood cells and pus and everything else like that. And your detoxification process will kill you. We're calling this one tuberculosis. They have not found a bacterium for it yet. I guess they didn't find a way to fudge that. But it's still causing a lot of deaths today, but only in poorer countries that have bad sanitation and that are still using lead and iron-based cooking ware.
how do they treat it? So someone gets toxic from what you just described, and you go into a mainstream hospital. How would they treat you?
Oh, they're going to give you IV antibiotics. So the person always dies because now you're putting. It's like let's go. It's like Steve Martin used to say in Theodoric of York. I don't know if you guys are old enough for that, but when he was on his theme for that, he was a medieval barber, and when everybody was sick, he was like, "Oh, what you need is a good bleeding," you know. And so then all his patients would die. It's the same thing. You go into these emergency rooms and they're treating it for a respiratory infection that doesn't exist. You're just trying to get the body clean, and you start putting all these drugs in, and decenide and steroids and all these other kinds of stuff that assault the body. And the person dies because you're overloading it with now the drug toxins. The doctors back in the day, that really had success during, Crow, you mentioned the Spanish flu, okay, which was highly propagandized in order to anchor in the pharmaceutical companies.
Yeah, third of the world died, don't you know?
Third of the world died, right? That's what they put out there from the Spanish flu. It was a virus this time. No, nothing could be further from the truth. The Spanish flu was caused from poor sanitation, industrial revolution, an abundance of iron and lead in the atmosphere from dirty environments, from building roads, from dirt roads that would kick up, people breathing this shit in all the time. I mean, the doctors of the day that were having success with pertussis and whooping cough and tetanus and tuberculosis, they were all giving their patients pure water, pure diet, pure fruit. They would just like feed them fruit, that's it, and raw milk. And every single hospital that was of worth back in the turn of the 20th century, again, early 1900s, all of these pioneer doctors were using sunlight. Hey, how about that? You know, creating vitamin D to heal your body. These were the doctors that really had the success. And people started spitting stuff up and getting rid of all the toxicity. And it wasn't until the Rockefellers came around and the pharmaceutical companies in the 40s and the 50s, when the diseases were already more or less gone post-World War II, when sanitation and plumbing and everything else was really, really improving. And then they brought out all these vaccines, and the disease rate went straight up. And what do? Now the polio vaccine comes out. They start administering this toxic crap. More people are getting paralysis than ever before because of the toxic crap. And they don't label it polio anymore. This is in my book. They labeled it paralytic spinal meningitis. See? So a disease disappears just like that, right? Just on paper. So, you know, it's all a mind game. It's a mind game. And unless you can keep ahead of it and heal yourself and understand how to do that with some help from, a doctor like me or somebody else, you and your family are going to be in trouble. And there's so many different diseases were created from the Industrial Revolution. Scarlet fever is another one, right? What was that all about? There was never a scarlet fever vaccine, but apparently it just went away. People also talk about measles. What's measles about? What are measles and mumps about? Remember mumps? We don't talk about mumps anymore. Remember that?
I supposedly had that when I was a kid.
Yeah, I have mumps too. Basically, it's lymphatic blockage of your cervical, your neck. Well, first of all, your parathyroid gland in the throat, and then also your neck lymph nodes. They clog up because it's not a germ. I mean, whatever we had in our diets at the time was clogging all of that up, and we needed to drain it out. But, mumps doesn't really come around too much anymore. What still comes around is measles. And people don't understand that measles is also a product of dirty lymph, dirty blood, and needing to cleanse the lymphatic system. All right. A lot of times, certain populations are getting measles. It's not measles at all. It's just it's insect bites. Smallpox, another one, right? It was determined when the whole smallpox thing was going on. They were saying people were dying. They fudged the statistics. The vaccine killed more people than it helped, for sure, for smallpox. Smallpox is not created by a virus. Smallpox is a bed bug problem. It's another sanitation issue. Did you know that bed bugs have a saliva that it contains a anesthetic? So it numbs the skin around where they're biting so that you don't know that you're being bitten.
There's a few biting bugs like that.
Right. And if you have them in your bed and you're being bitten constantly, and it's notoriously poor populations that get smallpox. The immigrants had it when there was the big move out west in Yellowstone. They talk about it in Taylor Sheridan's show, which is a really good show, by the way. If you want to get a real depiction of really what happened around that time, watch that show. But they always, they thought it was contagious, and they would just, shoot people that had smallpox, essentially, because they thought that they would then get it. Nothing could be further than the truth, unless you're sleeping in the same environment, the same insect-infested environment. So it's toxins, it's insects, it's all these different things that create these different problems throughout history. And then some just good old historical fudging. Oh, well, we gave smallpox to the Indians by giving them smallpox-infested blankets. That story as well has been debunked. It wasn't smallpox that they were dying from. Again, they had the same problems with these insects as we did. So these stories are all propaganda to boost up the pharmaceutical industry. And I have the study in my other office, but they have debunked that whole smallpox given to the Indians blanket thing. There's no evidence anywhere written on that. It was a story that was told, and it's just like the story was passed down through generations, and everybody just kind of took to it and just kept spreading it. People are very adamant about holding on to their misconceptions. You notice that?
Yeah.
They don't want to think that they've been wrong all these years, especially people who are very germ phobic. They don't want to know that anything else can be happening. These germs exist, and they get pissed at you if you try to burst that bubble. And these are the ones that went out and got 7 COVID shots. These are the ones who are always sick. It's very interesting, too, because a lot of these people who are pharmaceutical genuflectors, they worship the pharmaceutical companies. Whatever they come out with, whatever vaccine they have, I want to get it. I want all my kids to get all the new vaccines. Unfortunately, I have a brother that I haven't talked to in a long time that I just discovered he has Alzheimer's, got every COVID shot, got every, real vaccine puppet, right? For he and the entire family. Whenever you see it, whenever you see it like that, the programming is very, very deep, and there's unfortunately nothing you could do with that. You're very much a slave in the system for their profiteering, and they'll make profits on you from day one till the day you die.
To me, this is almost like the whole scheme was put together around the one principle: the mind precedes all. This is why I say belief is the enemy of knowing. For some people, unbelieving something is nearly impossible.
Mm-hmm.
And if you think about what you've just laid down, it goes at the root of mind precedes all. Because if you're of the opinion that something external is what's causing all the problems and attacking you, your mind is 180 degrees away from my body can heal itself. So instead of trying to get your body to heal itself, you're constantly on the defense for a thing that doesn't exist.
Mm-hmm. And in today's world, the ones who ridicule you and ridiculed you for not getting the COVID shot and everything else like this back in the day, they laughed themselves to the grave with all these drugs and pharmaceuticals that they're taking. Even if you live to your 85, what's the quality of life like? I deal with people for 40 years every single work day of my life, and I see it happening. And when people get off pharmaceuticals and they start having a revelation, they have their come to Jesus moment. That's almost what it takes, Crow. And you're not going to break that programming until you break down. Your body just breaks down. You keep taking these stupid pharmaceutical products. It breaks down more. And then something, the wisdom, the God wisdom from inside of you finally comes up and says, what the hell are you doing? Stop it. And then that's the come to Jesus moment that I say. People have that and they're like, well, maybe I should try something else. And that's when they turn around and can really save themselves. And there are plenty of people, they fill my practice, that are doing that. But there's still a nice big nest egg of the world's population for the pharmaceutical industry to prey upon. And the vampire, they're basically just
Parasites.
Cattle. People are just cattle to them. From the day you're born and you get shot up with everything that they're making money on, then you go up and get all the shots because you can't exist without their shots because then you can't go to school. God forbid you don't go to one of these indoctrinating schools, right? So they make it off you there. Then you get sicker from that, and they can probably make it off you there, or you get cancer or something like that. Then they make it off you there through that the whole cancer industry, because they're not healing people there; they're just making them more sick. So disease begets disease, begets disease, begets disease, and it's from the womb to the tomb, right? Until you're so toxic at a certain age you develop Alzheimer's or some sort of degenerative neurological disease at this point. And, they're siphoning your bank account with that too. So if you think about that's the physical aspect, the siphoning of your bank account. What's the spiritual aspect, you guys? What they're doing is they're sucking your life force, right? It's spiritual vampirism. They control your entire life with that. They make you spend all of your life force energy, not on joy, not on creating the life of your dreams, not on loving your neighbor and creating a perfect society, maybe some sort of utopian Star Trek thing that might be possible at some point in the future, but they have you focused on basic fight or flight survival for the rest of your life, so that you're this egocentric, self-centered, self-preserving, fearful entity that they just eat. They're eating you all of your life. Your money system represents you work for your money, right? So you're putting your energy into that. Your life force energy goes into whatever career you choose. You go out there, you put that out there, and that's your physical life force. And the physical aspect of that you get in return for that is cash, right? You put that into your bank account, and hopefully you could live well, and you start paying your bills and doing all this kind of stuff. But you get caught in this life of commerce that has nothing to do with joy, has nothing to do with fulfilling your destiny and discovering what it is to be a joyful being on this planet. You're always caught up in just serving them. And this is really, we'll talk about that in the next hour, about where the black magic is. I mean, the true vampirism all comes from concepts like the germ theory. It starts with that. And if you can't let that go, folks, you're not going to go anywhere. There's no way of doing this halfway. You can't say, I have mothers that say in my practice, well, I'll delay the vaccines and I'll give some now and some later. So you're just giving poison a little bit over time rather than all at once, which granted might be a little better, but you're still killing the individual with that. So we're pretty far away from taking the germ theory and throwing it into the trash, but we're a lot closer than we will be. All you need to do is look on YouTube, or I haven't been on that platform in a long time. What's the name of it? It's Telegram. But it seems like every other person in the truth movement is talking about how germs and viruses don't exist these days. And I'm really happy about that, because there's a lot more information out about there, but we're still in the mainstream viewed as lunatics.
I certainly see it a lot more these days than I used to even just a few years ago.
I was the only one doing it 20, 30 years ago, so I was really viewed as a lunatic. But, now at post-COVID, everybody's doing it.
Well, consider all the people who bought into this and went at it whole hog. Those are the people that are going to disappear en masse. It seems like we must be headed towards a time when there are many, many fewer people that will be willing to do such things. But this is what is coming with the digital money and the social rating systems. They know that they will have a difficult time fooling everyone in the way they did with COVID. They get their digital ratings. It'll just simply be you take this or you do without. Once the social ratings get here and the digital money, if you don't do what you're told, you won't be able to do things. Get on a plane, rent a place, go to school. All these things will be restricted to you. And that is the reason for this digital takeover. They will no longer need so much propaganda to get things done. They'll simply snap their fingers. And if you don't play their game, they'll start depriving you.
And we've been talking about this since the Clinton era, haven't we?
Yeah.
I mean, understanding that this could happen. It's just now we're closer to the technological reality of that. People are so enamored with ChatGPT and AI and everything else like this. And I'm just like, why are you so enamored with ChatGPT? It's a computer program that basically has a standard database of information that it's able to put into the human language so as to think that you're talking with somebody texting, or you have a voice coming back at you from a computer. Listen, AI is programmed to tell you certain answers. It's not going to give you the full spectrum of information. It's not a human being that can analyze and take a look at what you're listening to and hearing and say, I wonder if that's true or not. Let me check that out a little further. And it's not a human being that can say, what does my intuition say about that? I mean, because we all have within us access to thousands of years of knowledge just by tuning in to our own soul, our own intuition, to understand if something is really correct or incorrect, right? You know that on the depths of the inside, something either feels right or it doesn't, right? And if it feels right, that's coming from a space beyond this world. You're getting a message. And that's what they're really trying to take away from us. They want us into this whole AI, easy sex, easy relationships, no commitment, easy food, easy work, 4-day weekend, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, it's like the movie Loden's Run. You know, you have all of these different, you have all the information you need, you have all of the pleasures that you want, and then they knock you off at age 30 in a spiritual, quote unquote, ceremony that you think is real. You think you're going to, you're flying up into the sky and being renewed. If you ever saw Loden's Run with Michael York.
Great movie.
Great movie.
The message of it makes it very, isn't it interesting? It's all based around Capricorn, but did you ever take the time to notice that when Logan and Jenny Agutter plays that role, she was also in Walkabout, which is a good 70s movie. Yep. When they escape from the place, they have to go through a frozen area that has a guardian robot, as if they're going beyond Antarctica or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's my job to freeze you. And it's like the robot from Lost in Space,
Well, that's the other thing. Those people were meant to be food because they ran out of sea creatures. So all those frozen people were going to be food.
Feeding into the society that's in the bubble there.
Yep. And this echoes back to what's coming to light now. I have recently caught a bunch of offhand jokes about people being in food lately in sitcoms that came to us from the early 2000s and 90s. I think there's something to that, actually.
Soylent Green.
Yeah.
Soylent Green is people.
Tuesday is Soylent Green Day.
What do you mean?
Tuesday, I think Tuesday equates with Mars, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah. Tuesday is Martes, yeah. Mm-hmm. Or is it Miércoles?
Miércoles is Wednesday.
Right, but is that Mars?
I was thinking it was Tuesday, but I'd have to
Martes.
look at...
Yeah, it is Mars. Yeah, Mars is Tuesday. Yeah, Martes. Where are we going with that? We were talking about these different films. Yeah.
Well, there's so many tells.
You were going about the cannibalism, right? Because that conversation I've noticed is coming up. It's coming up in different circles on the media as well. That's what I wanted to say. And I also noticed that when patients start coming in and start talking about this stuff, it's like, oh yeah, did you hear that they're discovering that they're in Taco Bell that there's like human protein? And I'm like, okay, here we go. Now they're taking all those fetuses from Planned Parenthood, and they're not only using them for genetic research and things like that, but now they're actually grinding up.
Well, wait a minute here, Jason. Tell him. Remember the flavor? The episode you did the lookups on the flavor.
Yeah, the Pepsi.
What was that
one.
from the 70s? They've been putting human DNA in the food for flavor components.
I actually did a whole thing on this, and here's how they get around it. So the fetal cells are not in the food. Okay, they use the fetal cells to test how the artificial flavor reacts to human cells. Okay, that's what they use it for. So they still use human tissue for it, but they don't put the tissue into the actual flavoring. It's not a flavoring that they sprinkle on. Supposedly, this is what we're talking about. Maybe they're doing it now. I really don't know. But they were using it for flavor research. And Planned Parenthood, I don't know if people know this, but they've been making millions, billions of dollars on selling aborted fetuses for scientific research. Most of it is illegal if people were to know about it.
Stem cells, right?
Well, stem cells is not so bad because stem cells comes from the umbilical cord. You're going to throw out the placenta and the umbilical cord anyway. It's not a human life. I talk about in one of my lectures about how they get some of this tissue, which has to be alive, and it's really awful. I mean, because these fetuses in many cases are still alive, and they rip the tissue out of their bodies. And nurses who have been sickened and throwing up by this say that they actually hear the fetuses scream when this is happening. So it's a case of black magic and child abuse that goes beyond belief. I mean, they say there's no human experimentation. Well, Planned Parenthood is the culprit of it. And I'm not talking about the debate about abortion, my body, blah, 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 whatever else goes along with that. I'm talking about the actual organization. Planned Parenthood is evil in and of itself with what they do with the fetuses that they obtain. That's a whole other episode.
It was built to reduce population, but we're coming close to the top of the hour here. Jason, anything you want to get in here? It's been a tight conversation.
Well, to that last point, I've seen some things being discussed of strange proteins being found in certain fast food restaurant, quote unquote, food. being linked to human DNA. So think about that the next time you want to order some Mickey D's.
Hey man, chickens don't have fingers.
Mickey D's and also Taco Bell. I think, Rose, I sent you Joe Rogan on that, didn't I? Taco Bell was being accused. Yeah, they were just in a lawsuit with the FDA about what they're putting in their meat filler. Apparently, they said, well, it's at least 65% meat. Well, they found out it was over 50% of these fillers, and part of that filler, besides oats, is silica fibers, guys, silicon fibers, which is going to feed into what we're going to be talking about next hour, because silica in your body can become active through microwave manipulation. It's the basis of a disease called Morgellons. Have you heard of that?
Sure have.
Oh yeah, we used to see the pictures, but I got to jump in here. We've got a wrap for hour one. Go ahead and tell folks where they can find your sites or books or whatever you'd like to lay out.
Thank you very much. Yeah, go to exlibris.com and just punch in Goodbye Germ Theory. That's the way I prefer you get it. And for people that don't like to use Amazon, great way to do it. But if you just type in Goodbye Germ Theory on Google, or my name, Dr. William Trebing, Trebing, you'll find a plethora of stuff. I'm a Google villain. I'm all over the place, much despite their chagrin. And the book has over 800 great reviews on Amazon, and it's been translated into about 4 different languages, including in the Middle East, which is interesting. And then if you want some information, which is all freebies, go to saynotovaccines.org. One of the things I didn't mention is my church. I help people use their religious exemption to get out of vaccination. I've sent you some pretty ironclad documents, which you can just hand into your school board, use your religious exemption if you still have one, and many states still have one.
That's in the book as well.
Yeah, but if you go to saynotovaccines.org, you can actually get involved with the church. You get these documents in the mail, and they, it has your kid's name on them, and then it's no problem. Just give these, say you're exercising your religious freedom rights, not privileges. Remember, rights, folks. Privilege is something you're granted. A right is something you have from God. It is your religious right to refuse these toxins in most states. What they do is that some ambitious, brainwashed school nurse will say, well, you have to prove that your religion states that you can't have vaccines. Well, guess what? I formed a church just for that reason. Within the tenets of the church, it says you can't have vaccines because they're ungodly and your body is the temple of the Lord. So people say, well, there are no religions out there that say you can't have vaccines. Not only does my religion and church say you can't have vaccines, it also says you can't wear a mask. How about that?
There you go. All right, we got a wrap here. Jason, anything you want to add?
I think we're good. Let's go for hour 2.
All right. This has been hour 1 of episode 647. We're going to come back and we're going to hit on a lot of things that just won't be allowed to run in public spaces, as I mentioned in the opening of this. Anyhow, hour 1 is free to everybody at crow777radio.com. Members know to log in for the full episode, and they get access to all the forums and comment sections. They can create top-level topics, and they can stream the 2-hour film called Shoot the Moon. That covers all my past telescope work with the moon, a litany of weird UFO things like the shooting orb in chemtrails on film, and I think there are 7 lunar waves, and the discovery of the so-called second sun. I'm prepping up to change my geography for a period of time because it is becoming abundantly clear the only time that I'm going to clearly get a shot at it is at sunrise. Also on the website is exclusive access to my current solar work and solar stills because people were requesting them. With that, we're going to take a short break. We're going to come back for hour 2 and cover things that are probably not going to be allowed to run anywhere. I'd like to wish you all a happy, healthy, and higher-minded new era, and I hope to see you logged in as a member for hour 2. There it is, man. Cheers.
Belief is the enemy of knowing.